Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started here in just a couple minutes. We've got quite a few people logging into the webinar right now, so we're going to give them just a couple minutes to get situated, and we'll start right at 12 o'clock. Hey, everybody. Again, just another minute or two. A lot of people are getting into the webinar right now, joining in the on the webinar. So we will get started in just another minute or two. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Chris Bonamy. I am the Deputy Director for the DuPage County Stormwater Management Department, and we are here for a field pollution prevention webinar for MS4 communities. That's municipally separate storm sewer system communities. This is a free webinar where we will focus on common pollution prevention practices. We have several of these workshops throughout the year. The Illinois Environmental Protection Agency requires this training under the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System program. We are encouraging governmental staff, including stormwater, public works, and transportation staff, as well as any contractors out there to attend or view this webinar. There will be 1.5 PDHs available. So if you are aware of any other staff in your departments that could not attend this afternoon, this webinar is being recorded and the presentations will be made available for viewing at their convenience. Mary Mitros from our office will email a link to the recorded webinar and presentations, as well as a certificate for the 1.5 PDHs shortly following the conclusion of the webinar. Typically, we have these workshops in person, but due to COVID-19, we're using Zoom meetings as our platform to host the webinar. Before we begin, I just want to throw out a couple thank yous. First of all, thank you to Mary Mitros. She is the Stormwater Communications Supervisor, and she is behind the scenes running the show today. She helped organize this webinar. I'd also like to thank Baxter and Woodman for helping line up our speakers for this afternoon. And once again, I'd like to thank our audience. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. We hope that everyone continues to practice good hygiene by washing their hands frequently, social distancing, and wearing a mask in public. And if you do feel sick or ill, please isolate yourself or quarantine to prevent the further spread of the coronavirus. I think that's all of our housekeeping items. So we're going to get into it right away here. We have 4 great speakers with us this afternoon to cover these various field pollution prevention topics. We have Todd Bonk from Visu Sewer of Illinois, Jason Kaufman from the city of Goshen, Indiana, Ryan Reisig from Pinellas County, Florida, and Dan Bounds from Baxter and Woodman. But before I turn things over to them, I want to tell you about our chat feature. So if you do have any comments or questions during these presentations, please type them directly into the chat box, and we will relay those on to the speakers following their presentations. And we will try to get to as many of those questions or comments as possible as time will allow. So first up is going to be Todd Bonk. Todd is from Visu Sewer of Illinois. He is the division manager there. Todd started working for Visu Sewer of Wisconsin as summer help while attending Marquette University in Milwaukee. And that was a little while ago because at the time the mascot for Marquette was a warrior and not a golden eagle. He graduated with a business administration degree in 1990. In 2016, he transferred from Wisconsin office to the Illinois branch, and he is your resource for sewer inspection, maintenance, and rehabilitation. Todd is going to talk about sewer system cleaning best management practices. So Mary, if you can turn things over to Todd, we'll get him going.
I have screwed this up, and I apologize for that. There we go. Maybe I've got it right now. So, can everyone see? Are you just still seeing my? And
Todd, it's on the slide deck. There you go.
Now I've got it. I apologize. It is my first Zoom meeting, and I do apologize for the confusion with that. I am Todd Bonk. I am the division manager for Visu Sewer of Illinois. We are a company that does cleaning, inspection, and rehabilitation of sewers, both sanitary and storm. Just wanted to welcome you. I saw a number of people that I know signing in, and we appreciate you coming to our webinar. With that, you can see the first slide that I've got, my title slide. That's a 96-inch sewer in Milwaukee under the Marquette interchange. There's 5 foot of debris in that. It is a storm sewer. We cleaned on that. It was 1,000 feet long. We cleaned on that for 5 months. So storm sewers can get very, very dirty, and that's not a lot of fun there. Typical storm sewer system is designed with catch basins. Those catch basins need to be cleaned out on a regular basis. Once that sump is full, the debris will start going down the pipes. And I guess the thing that I want to caution everyone on is you know, this is your storm main running down the middle of a street. Well, how does that water get into your system? Typically, it gets in there through curb inlets with leaders coming into the storm system, to the storm main. A lot of times, those curb inlets don't have sumps. They don't have catch basins. They're using the sump going down the middle of the road to catch all the debris. Well, you know as well as I that you can get some debris into that 8-inch pipe and 12 or 8-inch or 12-inch pipe, and next thing you know, you've got a blockage and you're getting a backup on your street. Luckily, it's stormwater and not sanitary, but at the same time, it's going to cause more issues unless we get that debris out of there. So one of the things that we're going to talk a lot about and see a lot about is how pipes fail, how they, what happens when they do fail, and then basically some storm cleaning standard operating procedures that are really something that you want to at least investigate, and we would strongly encourage you to adopt. So here's your typical storm sewer system. The reason that I'm talking about debris is in this next slide. How much water can a pipe hold? Now, if you look at it, most of those leaders that I was talking about leading from a curb inlet into your storm main are 12, 8, generally 12-inch, generally 8-inch, right? If you have no sump and you start getting debris in there and you get a stick in there or you get a bottle in there and debris starts building up, look at how quickly you lose capacity. In a 20-foot section, which is typically, you know, if you're looking at from the curb to your storm main, you're looking at a 117-gallon capacity in a 12-inch pipe. You fill that pipe with 4 inches of debris, you've taken a third of the dimension out, but you've taken well over half of the carrying capacity of that storm sewer. So you go from being able to carry 117 gallons in that 20-foot section of pipe to 52 gallons. Then if you have even more debris, look at how quickly it deteriorates from there. You go from 52 gallons per 20 feet down to 13. You're losing capacity in your storm system very quickly. You may have lots of capacity in the main, but you're losing it getting it to the main. So hence, what we'll talk about is keeping your catch basins clean, keeping your sumps clean, having as much coming out of your system in terms of debris as possible. That'll allow the water to run down your pipes, and you won't have near the issues that you could have. I want to talk a little bit about how a sewer fails. This is universal. This is the same if it is a sanitary sewer or a storm sewer. Initially, if you get water in or inflowing or exfiltrating, that inflow or exfiltration will start dislodging the spoils around the pipe. You will create a void. Once that void gets created, you'll have a void that will allow your pipe to collapse or move. Initially, it's going to move. Ultimately, it will collapse. So keeping that system tight is always a good idea. Now, in some communities, you've got non-gasketed RCP, and at one point, people really didn't care if water got in or out of the storm sewer. They just wanted to get rid of the water. Well, now you see gasketed RCP for the most part in your storm sewers, because they understand that we're creating a void around that pipe and ultimately creating a failure of that sewer pipe. When that water is infiltrating or exfiltrating, sooner or later, you will get voids outside your pipe. And when you get a void outside your pipe, what happens? This happens. You end up with sinkholes. And as you can see by some of these, You know, you're about to lose a house, you lose a car, you lose a truck. More examples. So, this one is an example down in Houston. And what's significant about this is people didn't think that Houston was susceptible to any kind of infiltration or exfiltration, and especially not susceptible to sinkholes because they had a very high clay content in their soil. However, as you can see, even soils with high clay content need preventive maintenance on their systems, or this can happen. So, you know, in a lot of places in the Chicagoland area, we've got running sand. Well, you open up a pipe, any way, you know, open joint, somebody directional bores through a pipe, and next thing you know, you've got a rainstorm and running sand bringing debris right into that system. You're going to get a sinkhole. It's pretty much inevitable. So, storm sewer program and some of the SOPs. Basically, do you have a plan? Do you clean your sewers? Do you maintain or react? Maintaining is generally a lot cheaper than repairing the hole on the screen, where you've got not only a car that's gone down into a hole, but look at the pipes that have been destroyed in old brick manholes. Do you have the proper equipment? If you're trying to clean 60-inch storm sewer with a trailer jetter, you're not going to be very successful. If you're cleaning big pipe, you need big equipment. If you're cleaning small pipe, those trailer jets are fantastic, but you're not going to move a lot of water. The way that you clean storm sewer is through volume. You need a lot of water to be moving through the system. If you don't have a lot of water moving through the system, you just simply aren't going to move that debris. Storm sewers are generally located on roads. I have to bring this up, just like Chris brought up the COVID-19 safety concerns. Anytime you or your employees are out on the street, out in the public, please be safe. Your most important job is to get you home every night, period. So please make sure that you as a community have a good, solid safety program. Don't put anybody out there where they may run into God knows what, but not a safe situation, okay? Lastly, do you have the budget? Storm sewers are generally forgotten about. Quite honestly, in our experience as a contractor, they're an afterthought. Sanitary sewers are much more in the news in these current times, but storm sewers are vitally, vitally important. And I'll show you a little bit more as my presentation goes on. But please make sure that you have a budget directly for your storm sewers in your local communities. NASCO is the National Association of Sewer Services Companies. And it is a trade organization that many contractors belong to. Many communities belong to it as well. NASCO suggests that you clean your catch basins and storm sewers every 3 to 5 years. They also recommend that you televise the entire storm sewer system every 7 to 10 years. So every other time you clean your system, you should get a camera in there to see what's going on. And I hate to keep going back to this. I'll show you some slides on why that's a good idea shortly. When you do remove the debris, you need to take it to either a certified transfer station or your local wastewater treatment plant. You need to, even though this is storm debris and theoretically and technically it is not a pollutant, you need to dispose of it in the proper ways. And how we do it as a contractor, we either take it to the treatment plant and put it in the drying beds, let it dry out. and then it's disposed of from there, or we take it to a local transfer station and dump it there where they do the same thing. So it's suggested that you break your stormwater system into basins, very similar to a sanitary system. You have to kind of decide on how your basins would be set up, but the theory behind that is it's easier to eat an elephant one bite at a time than to try to eat the whole thing. By that I mean, take it in parts. Clean. If you divide it into 5 basins, 1 a year, after 5 years, you're done, and you can start over again. So breaking it into little more bite-sized pieces is a much easier way to approach it. Be aware of fall. Leaves and grass contribute significantly to the organic debris in your system. Your sumps will fill up very, very quickly, especially if you have a lot of mature trees in your community. If you're in a community that doesn't have a lot, it's all brand new, basically homes built over farm fields, it's going to be a few years before you get there. But if you're in DuPage County and some of the more developed areas, every fall you got to be cleaning out some of these catch basins, or you're going to run into problems. Those leaves get in there and they start to break down. They will leave a silt in there. That silt is absolutely horrible. It smells as bad as sanitary sewage. You want to get that out of your system as quickly as possible. In that same light, spring cleaning is always a good idea, especially if you're in a community that doesn't like to use salt. They like to use sand on the roads during our long Midwest winters. Getting that sand out of your system is always a very, very good idea. Okay? Inflow and infiltration is something that the sanitary guys and sanitary people on the line talk about all the time. Infiltration is groundwater getting into your system. Inflow is the surface water. In this situation, we're talking about surface water. If the catch basin system, if the storm sewer system is overloaded, it's going to go someplace. It's going to go into your sanitary sewers. Why is that important? If you look at over half of the water flowing into treatment plants is storm water. This water does not have to be treated. Most of the plants in DuPage County cost anywhere from $5 to $6 per 1,000 gallons to treat sanitary sewage. If you have 50% inflow above and beyond your normal sanitary sewer levels, you're treating stormwater that doesn't need to be treated. If your system is working, if your system is operating, that water is going through the storm system and you are not paying to treat it. If you're thinking of $5, let's look at $5 per 1,000, and we get a huge rainstorm. It seems like we're getting the storm of the century every year. How much water are you treating? How much are you paying to treat stormwater that you don't need to treat? You could be spending it on a lot better things. To not identify and not deal with inflow and infiltration out of the storm system into the sanitary is just irresponsible from a fiscal perspective. You want to keep your storm system flowing so that you don't have it overflowing into your sanitary system. And does it? Take a look at these dye test pictures. Same footage, same pipe. Storm systems, the storm system was surcharged. Where did it go? Went right into the sanitary lines. So now you simulate a rain event like we did in the right-hand picture in a pipe, and lo and behold, we're treating a ton of water that doesn't need to be treated. You're spending it in your budget and you don't need to be spending it. Again, same distance, same area. same results. So there is a lot of stormwater that, because the storm system isn't clean, is going into your wastewater treatment plants. You guys are paying to treat it as a county, as a community, and you don't need to do that. Okay? A little while before I said, there's, you know, it's good to get a TV camera into your system. This is an EPA gap analysis result, and in this slide, 1980. Let's just look at poor and failure. About 10% of existing sewer pipe, both sanitary and storm, was failing or in very poor condition. This is 1980, mind you. Okay, let's move forward to 2000. That number went from 10% to 23%. And look at the excellent. It's shrunk from 69% in excellent condition to 43%. Now let's go forward to 2020, and we've gone to a whopping 42%. So here, these slides right here are the slides that really tell you need to get a camera in your system, whether it be from DuPage County, who does televising, whether it's from Visu Sewer, who does televising. Every 7 to 10 years, get a camera in your system. If you can get a camera in your system, you can alleviate some of these problems. You can see where the pipe is transitioning from fair to poor or poor to failure, and you can address it before it becomes an issue and you've got water flooding Main Street. So I guess in conclusion, I want to go through the storm cleaning program again. You know, first and foremost, do you have a plan? If you don't, we need to look at getting a plan, get it in place. That's where the Baxter Woodmans of the world are fantastic at helping you out, getting you pointed in the right direction. If you need a contractor to help, we're always willing to help. Ask yourself if you maintain or react. Most communities react. We don't maintain. We wait until the system is full, it's overflowing, it's flooding out the mayor's home, and all of a sudden we got to fix it. So, you know, do you have the proper equipment? If you're cleaning large storm sewer, you need large equipment. This is where you need a Vactor, you need a VACCON, something large, a jet truck, something that's going to move a lot of water through pipes. If we go out and as a contractor and there's pipe larger than 27 inch on a particular job, we must go with the Vactor, simply because we need the volume of water to move the debris in the pipes. Okay. Again, just like the COVID-19, safety programs are paramount. Please have those in place, whether you're sending your guys out onto the street or you're dealing in the office with COVID. Safety is our most important, absolutely most important job that we do day in and day out. If you don't have the budget, start asking for it, start lobbying for it. You need to be cleaning your system. So again, just to hit the highlights, every 3 to 5 years, you've got to clean your system. Every 7 to 10, televise your system. Remove the debris to certified transfer stations or treatment plants. Break your system up into basins. Watch out for fall. Leaves and grass are bad for your storm system. And in spring, if you guys use sand to provide traction on your roads, you want to clean out your storm system, because that's going right into the storm system, the first big rain of the spring. So with that, I thank you. I think I kept in my 20 minutes. If not, I do apologize to future speakers here. But so with that, Chris, any questions of me?
Yeah, great job, Todd. We did have one question come in. It says, what if you don't have a wastewater treatment plant to take material to?
That's where you want to go to a transfer station. There are transfer stations all throughout the Chicagoland area. There's North Lake, Des Plaines, Homewood, Lake County, Elgin. I'm trying to think of more. Those are the ones that come to mind right away. You take it to the transfer station and dump it there. They'll charge you anywhere from about $160 for a Vector load of debris to $80 per ton if you get in closer to the city. But there are places that you can go to dump it. If you ever need any help with that, all you have to do is give us a shout and we can at least direct you to the right location.
All right,
I would like
thank-
to just chime in, Chris. This is Mary Beth, DuPage County, and just note that DuPage County Woodridge Green Valley Treatment Plant also has a Vector station there on site that can be used through an agreement with DuPage County.
Very
So
good.
that's
Thank you, Mary
a
Beth.
local one for our community.
Okay, again, great job, Todd. We are going to power through here. We're going to move on to our next speaker, and that is Jason Kaufman from the city of Goshen, Indiana. For the past 6 years, Jason has been working as a stormwater coordinator for the city and has been working in the stormwater field for the past 13 and a half years, reviewing stormwater plans, conducting erosion and sediment control inspections of construction sites, and working to educate the public on stormwater topics. He attended Goshen College for his undergraduate degree and Taylor University for his master's degree in environmental science. When not focusing on stormwater, he likes to read a good book and spend time with his family. Jason will be talking about proper landscape waste handling. So take it away, Jason.
Well, thank you everyone for having me here today and for joining us as I get it going here. I'm happy to be here and talk about the City of Goshen's program and how we deal with landscape waste and how we handle it and dispose of it. And before I get into that discussion, what I really want to do with any issue that we look at from a stormwater issue, I want to look at all sides of an issue, make sure that the best decision can be made and benefit the most people. And so with that, kind of a question that I like to ask is what is your watershed address? And a watershed is all the land that water falls on that goes to a single point, to a single body of water. And we all have physical addresses. Physical address, where I work, it's 204 East Jefferson Street, Goshen, Indiana, 46528. But we also have a natural address, natural watershed address. And so let's take the United States and look at all the different watersheds that are throughout the country. And today there's 3 different basins that are represented with presenters and attendees. So most of you are probably in the Mississippi-Missouri Drainage Basin. We have somebody down in Florida from the South Atlantic Gulf Basin. And then also where I'm at is the Great Lakes Basin. And so all the water that flows across our streets, across the hard surfaces, across our yards and lawns, it goes somewhere. And we all live downstream of somebody. So I like to figure out what our watershed address is. So let's focus where I work. And so we zoom in, it's the Great Lakes watershed. And Goshen is located in Lake Michigan. Zooming in closer, we find out that Goshen's located in the St. Joe River watershed, which is found in Michigan and Indiana. Going in closer, the Elkhart River watershed, it's the largest watershed, one of the larger watersheds in Indiana, and the largest tributary to the St. Joe River. And unfortunately, the Elkhart River is also known as contributing a lot of sediment pollution to the St. Joe River, and it's a concern. So we are working a lot to reduce sediment pollution. And you can definitely see that after a rain event when you go to the city of Elkhart where the two rivers come together. And you can see the brown water mixing with the blue, and that's pretty evident for a couple miles downstream. Going in closer, you can see the different waterways that are around Goshen. And you'll have the Elkhart River and Rock Run Creek that flow through Goshen along with some other streams and ditches. And getting closer, you start to see what we call a sewer shed, where the water runs across the hard surface and into the storm sewer structures and the pipes. So for where I work, it runs into the storm sewer and goes north to Rock Run Creek and out to the Elkhart River. So my watershed address is Rock Run Creek to the Elkhart River, and then to the St. Joe River, which flows to Lake Michigan and eventually flows out through the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence River to the Atlantic Ocean. So it's important when thinking about things to understand all sides of the story, to understand that we all live downstream of somebody else, and what we do impacts the people that live downstream of us. So why is it important to dispose of landscape waste properly? Well, plants have lived and died for eons, creating rich topsoil as they decompose. But when you start to mix urban areas with natural areas, you get a mixture of pervious landscape and hard landscape. So when you have a lot of trees along your roads, you're going to have leaves, and when you have falling in the fall and in the spring, you're going to have seeds and blooms and that type of thing that comes from the trees. But you're also going to have grass clippings. And when you mix trees, plants, and grasses with streets, sewers, and lawnmowers, what would have once decomposed in place may now end up in a pipe, a stormwater basin, or a waterway somewhere else. And that leads to, well, so case in point, this picture here, a lot of grass clippings got blown out to the road and washed down to a storm drain where it accumulated. And this could cause some drainage issues, which is one of the concerns that we have, water quantity concerns. If you have a lot of water on your roadway that's not getting into the storm drain because it's being blocked by grass clippings or leaves or branches, that is a concern, and it creates a safety issue. From a water quality standpoint, it picks up oil. You can see the oil sheen on this picture, and it picks up other things like nutrients as the leaves and grass clippings decompose, which can lead to algae growth. And this is a pretty extreme picture. This is from our Goshen's Environmental Center, where you have a lot of nutrient runoff to our stormwater basin. So there are many ways that you can improperly handle landscape waste. And a lot of times what you see is people blowing their grass clippings, sweeping, raking, or hosing their grass clippings out to the roadway. And a lot of times people just don't understand that when they put it out on the road, it doesn't just go away down the storm drain. That storm drain actually goes somewhere and can create drainage issues because of clogged pipes, or it also can create safety issues for bikes and motorcycles because the grass clippings themselves are slippery. Placing piles of leaves or grass clippings on the curb or in the curb line can cause the drainage to be blocked. In this case, you can see here some water is being blocked, and during a rainstorm, that's going to push the water out into the street, which creates a situation where an unsafe situation for vehicles. Improper disposal methods that can lead to clogged storm drains and clogged storm sewer pipes. You can see here that there are grass clippings that have accumulated in this pipe, and over time, if it's not cleaned out, trash and sediment and other debris will accumulate and cause backups. And then also you can have the nutrients coming from the decomposing landscape. You can have nutrients coming from the leaves and grass, leading to phosphorus and nitrogen getting into the water and algae growth. So some other issues that we have that we talk with our city employees about is making sure they know where the grass clippings are going when they're mowing. If it's not being mulched or chopped up, it's being blown somewhere, making sure they know that if it's going out in the street that they're going to have to spend time to push that, to blow that back into the grass. Or if they're going around waterways, that they're not blowing it into the water, because that's going to lead to potential algae problems on our waterways. Another thing that we look at, and this isn't really landscape waste handling, it's just how you deal with the landscape, and that's when to apply fertilizers and pesticides. Are they doing it at the right time, or is it going to rain in 24 hours, or has it just rained, or is it raining? and they're applying it at the wrong time. And then one other thing that we deal with, and it's come up a little bit this year with some construction sites, as we try to get construction sites, get permanent vegetation established on construction sites. If our lawnmowers are mowing, if our employees are mowing it too short, it's actually going to make establishing that vegetation, that permanent growth that we need, that cover, it's going to make it difficult, which will lead to erosion and lead to needing more fertilizer and potentially more runoff. So when it comes to helping people understand the proper ways to handle landscape waste, education is key, whether that be with employees or with the public. Making sure people understand and are reminded frequently about proper landscape waste handling is important, because a lot of times people are focused on other things than stormwater issues or in general, or how to take care of landscape waste, especially at this time that we find ourselves in. So providing education, whether that be through social media or putting it into the bill inserts or other places, other ways that you get information out to your employees or to the public, that it's key. So in this case, with this picture here, the grass got too long, the homeowner cut it, and now there's three issues here. One, the grass is going to potentially suffocate the remaining grass. The grass on the sidewalk is creating this, potentially created a safety issue for bikes. And then if this gets out to the road, it could get to a storm drain and cause some clogging. So we encourage people to manage to cut it at the right length, whether it be employees or the public. And we do encourage people to leave it lay, but that typically means using a mulching lawnmower, something that's going to chop it up and leave the grass clippings there to decompose as natural fertilizer. And if that's not the case, and people want to collect the grass, then they can either compost it in their garden or use it as a weed barrier on their garden. And if they still can't do that, they can collect it and take it to the environmental center, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. But we do know that when doing landscape, when mowing the lawn or raking leaves, that grass and leaves are going to end up in the street, and that's accepted. But we encourage people to sweep it up or blow it back off of the street, sidewalk, and driveway and back into their lawn or into the grass. Something so that it's not going to go down the storm drain. If it's being collected, the landscape waste, bush trimmings or branches, we encourage people to place it near the curb for pickup, because the city of Goshen does have a pickup throughout the year, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But if that's not possible, then they can dispose of it at the environmental center, our local facility, or they can order a city-owned trailer for drop off that they can fill up and have for a day or over the weekend to fill up if they're doing if they're trimming more bushes or trees. So that gets me to the city's program on how we deal with landscape waste. So what you see here is the Goshen's Environmental Center. You can see this is where all the material comes in. It's processed and converted into something that can be used by public employees at our parks or around buildings, and also by residents. And it keeps it from going to the landfill. So the city of Goshen, we offer brush pickup throughout the year. In the last week of April, the Goshen Street Department comes through and collects brush, leaves, and other landscape waste that residents have collected through the winter. And they do 2 passes through the city. This allows residents to have time to get the material out to the close to the edge of the streets or to the curb. And in some instances, with all the small piles around to save time, some of our employees will go around with a truck and pick up the waste and bring it to a central location where the loader can then pick it up off the street and put it in the dump truck and then take it to the environmental center. So they do this throughout the summer then as well, from May through September. The last Monday of every month, they take another week and run through the entire city again to pick up landscape waste that's been generated by residents, and so that people don't have to go to the environmental center. They can put it there, but it has to be timed right. Typically, you will see some piles out there the week after the street departments come through, and it sits there for 3 or 4 weeks. And if it's not put in the right spot, then it creates a problem, a drainage problem, or a problem with people using the sidewalk or driving. And one thing that we have to work with, that the stormwater department works with the street department on, is placement. The street department would love to have material as close to the edge of the street as possible because it's a lot easier for them to pick up, which I understand. But we also are trying to then not create stormwater drainage issues. And so it's important that we work together to find out what works best. And then also, it's important that the piles of landscape waste aren't mixed with trash or with one another, because it has to be sorted. If the trash is there, it has to be pulled out, and it has to be sorted at some point. And you can see here, somebody put a pile right next to a storm drain, and unfortunately this happens. You'll see it probably every month that somebody's put it on the street, and it creates a problem, and cars are going to drive through it. It's going to block stormwater, and so that has to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. So the other two options I've talked about, you can order a trailer from the city to be filled up with brush, or you can drop it off at the environmental center. Now the trailer is free of charge. The environmental center, depending on the material that you drop off, there might be a small fee associated with that, and it's only available to residents. So in the fall, the city goes through and picks up leaves, and that typically begins in mid to late October and lasts through mid-December. But it is weather and tree dependent. If the trees aren't dropping leaves, then the street department can't be going through and picking up the leaves, which can create some problems if leaf pickup runs into snow plowing, as it does happen sometimes. Residents are encouraged to rake leaves into long piles in the grass and leave it as close to the edge of the street as possible, and not block the entire sidewalk. And this by making long piles like this, the street department can come through with their vacuum trailers and pick up the leaves fairly quickly. Residents are encouraged to spray their leaf piles at least enough to wet it down, so that when there's windstorms, that it does not blow those leaves around. And again, residents are asked to keep the leaves off the streets, because the leaves can interfere with traffic flow, drainage, and issues with snow plowing. And we also ask residents not to put trash or sticks in with the leaf piles, because those vacuum trailers, if they get larger material stuck in the vacuum tubes, it creates a clog, and that leads to lost time, where the crews have to clean out the clog, and depending on how bad it is, sometimes that will knock the piece of equipment out of operation for a day or two, and that slows the process down. Street sweeping is very important, and the city of Goshen has 2 street sweepers. We have those running pretty much every day, and they will sweep downtown once a month, typically before the first Friday of every month when there's a downtown event, and also then once in the spring and once in the winter for the rest of the city. And in the spring, it's picking up sediment and sand that has accumulated from the winter, and any other debris that might have collected there. And then in the fall, it's the leaves that fall onto the street. With the mature trees that we have throughout Goshen, there are times where you can see quite a bit of leaves on the ground. And in this case, the street sweepers come through to pick up the leaves and to keep the storm drains from getting clogged. Storm damage is something else that our street department does with landscape waste handling. And a week ago, on this past Wednesday, we had a severe storm come through Goshen that created a lot of downed trees and branches. And so the street department will go out during those events, or after those events, pretty much immediately, and start removing trees from the right-of-way or from the road so that traffic flow can be restored. And sometimes if the damage is extensive enough, like it was last week, the street department will hold a special brush pickup. And so in the next week or two, the street department's going to be going through the city once again and picking up all the debris that's there. And there's quite a bit. You can see piles in those hard-hit areas along the street. However, if a property owner or a contractor takes a tree down, they are responsible for the proper disposal of that. And they could take that to the environmental center. So the environmental center is located on the north side of Goshen. It's available to residents to drop off branches and leaves free of charge, and yard waste and grass clippings for a small fee. And it's open Monday through Friday in the winter months and Monday through Saturday in the fall, or excuse me, in the summer. And except for on holidays, it is closed. And the environmental center takes all the brush and yard waste and turns it into mulch and compost that can then be reused by city employees at the parks or around the landscaping at city buildings, or it can be purchased by residents for their use. So let's get into the process that we use at the environmental center. It's dropped off by residents bringing it in on trailers, or by city employees picking up the dial trailer and dropping it off, or the dump trucks coming in after brush pickup every month. And they'll drop that off and where it can be sorted and prepared for the grinding process. It's sent through the grinder to chip up the larger pieces and prepare it for mixing, where it is placed into windrows, which is what you can see here. The yellow piece of equipment back there in the back corner, that is used to turn these windrows 1 to 2 times a month to help the process to decompose. You can see that machine here closer. Once the mixing process has been done for about 6 to 8 months, the material is ready for sorting. And if you've ever made applesauce, it's a similar process. You take the material that's been processed for 6 to 8 months, or the cooked apples, and you put that into the sorter or into the strainer, and you send it through the system. And as that material goes through, it's sorted either into the fine mulch or the applesauce, or into the waste, like the larger material, or the skin and stems and seeds, which can then be sent back through the process of grinding and mixing and sorting, so that you eventually get a nice final product of mulch. And in this case, it's a colored mulch, something that residents can come and get. They can either pick it up themselves for a fee, or they can have it delivered at a bit more cost. But then, besides the mulch, there is also compost that is available to people, and that takes about 12 months, a little bit over a year to process. And then the final thing is to install it. And this is landscaping or mulch that was installed around landscaping just this year. So with that, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Great job. It looks like we have a question that came in. Do you provide training for any of your landscape contractors in and around Goshen?
So that is something that we have not quite done yet. It's something that I know we need to do more training for our landscapers, not just the landscapers that the city hires, but just the private companies too. That is one thing that would probably help us reduce some of the grass clippings that are to our street. That is an area of our program that needs to be improved upon.
Okay, that looks like I don't see any other questions coming in right now, but if you do have any other questions for Jason, please log them into the chat box, and we will circle back to have him answer any questions that do come in. But thank you, Jason. Great job.
Thank you.
And we're going to keep on rolling here. We got a couple other presentations. Our third speaker is Ryan Rizik from Pinellas County, Florida. Ryan is an environmental specialist too with Pinellas County. He has a bachelor's degree in environmental health. He assists the county with maintaining compliance with the state NPDES permit by performing duties such as water quality monitoring, stormwater pollution education and enforcement, landscape maintenance, and fertilizer education and enforcement. He has worked in watershed protection for 12 years. Prior to that, he was an environmental health specialist at health departments in North Carolina and Florida. Ryan is going to talk about landscape waste management, BMPs.
Hi, sorry about that. The mosquito control helicopter happened to show up right as I'm coming on, so I had to move inside. So thank you for that introduction. So I'm going to talk a little bit about basically what you can do to help prevent the stormwater pollution that was mentioned earlier, and a little bit about our program and kind of what we're doing. And I'm going to touch on maybe some few other things outside of that, but generally what best management practice for landscapers can be done to help prevent the issues that were talked about today, and a little bit about the sources of the pollution. So I want to understand why it's important. I think we all kind of know why it's important, all the issues with fish kills, algae blooms, those sorts of things. And then some of those sources and then some of the consequences of those. We see those quite often. So some of the sources sometimes people don't think about is you got point sources. So those are directly from discharges at your wastewater plants, industrial plants, power plants, those sorts of things. Most of those are known and well controlled at this point, since we had the Clean Water Act since the 1970s. And then also atmospheric deposition is also a contributor. Most of that's due to combustion and fumes from other processes, industrial processes, go up in the atmosphere and then eventually come down over time, or from rainfall. And those can travel hundreds or thousands of miles even around the world. You can even get stuff you hear from China, for example. That's where a lot of our mercury comes from, especially in Florida. And then there's non-point source pollution. So after those first two were kind of regulated and controlled, they thought the EPA said there were still issues with water pollution, hence where we are now with this training being required and all that. And so that was basically from diverse sources, but smaller sources typically. So that's illegal dumping, stormwater runoff, sediment transport, erosion from different sources. So the biggest pollution issues we have, at least in our area, is nutrients from fertilizer. That's number one. It may be a little different category ranking in your area, but this is what ours is. Organic debris, grass clippings, lawn debris, and leaves. Also, those are nutrients as well. Bacteria from pet waste, but actually studies done here in Florida are showing that organic debris in the stormwater system actually contribute to fecal coliform readings as well, and not just waste. And then bacteria can also be from sanitary sewer leaks and that sort of thing as well. Petroleum oil products, sediments control, rubber off of tires, off of roads. Sediments can also come from farmland as well as construction sites when the soil is not held in place by vegetation or other processes. Toxic chemicals and pesticides used on the landscape or dumped or otherwise. And then trash and debris. So non-point source pollution is basically any pollution that runs off due to rainfall, usually over impervious surfaces, but can also be from other landscapes as well, or from leaching through the lawn and landscape. So basically it ends up in our storm drain system one way or the other, or our streams, and then eventually gets out to our bodies of water. Sometimes it's treated, sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's treatment ponds, sometimes there's not, depending on the age of the system and how it was set up. And the laws and regulations. So we had the Clean Water Act back in the 1970s was introduced because of all the pollution issues we had. Along with that, the Clean Air Act, like Zed addressed most of those two first issues we talked about. And then, so the NPDES is National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. That was developed to address those non-point source pollution particularly. That started around 1999 is when it got implemented. So it hasn't been around too long because that's what was determined to still be a problem after the other main issues were taken care of for the most part. There's maybe state requirements or regulations for fertilizer. Also for illicit discharges and fertilizer, there may be local laws or requirements as well. I'm not sure what's in your area, but I know all major urban areas do have illicit discharge ordinances as a requirement of their permit, and they're required to enforce those and make sure they follow up with any complaints and things like that. So just to give you a little overview, our program has been in place since 2010. It's a county-wide ordinance. It has a 50% slow release nitrogen requirement and no phosphorus applied to lawn or landscapes to reduce that nutrient pollution from fertilizer, that number one thing we were talking about. And then application restrictions, so you can't do it during rain events and things like that, which is pretty common in most places. And then there's also a restriction to the summer rainy season we have. So it may be dependent on your area when you should do it. It's like your example in your area, you shouldn't do it going into dormant season in the wintertime or it's cold out. Basically below 50 degrees, the grass is going to be actually growing. You wouldn't want to fertilize it during that period. It'll be different depending on your location. And then certification. So in our county, we do have a landscape best management practice certification. So all landscapers are doing mowing, blowing, tree trimming, anything like that. So all tree companies and landscape companies are required to take that training. This is actually part of the training is what I have shown you today. It's a very small portion of it because it is about 2.5 to 3 hour class. And there is a test at the end that we do. And also in Florida, we do require a fertilizer license for any applicators. And they have an 8-hour required training for that. That's renewed every 4 years. So that training helps them know how much to apply, when to apply it, all those local requirements that I was talking about. And then pollution prevention. So you want to prevent the pollution by controlling your landscape debris off impervious surfaces. Make sure you blow any vegetated debris back, not into storm drains, but back into the lawn or landscape, or clean it up otherwise. Dispose your trash properly. You want to make sure you follow labeling instructions, all your chemicals or fertilizer, or how they should be used, when it should be used, amounts, rates, and those sorts of things for the area you're fertilizing. And then make sure you clean up any spills you have. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then picking up after your pets, because pets are actually a fairly large one, because like for our example, I have a county of 900,000 people and about half of them own dogs. So it adds up to a lot when you're talking about over an entire year. So picking up your pet waste can become a big issue. So lawn and landscape cultural practices. Some things, we have Florida friendly landscape practice. It says Florida friendly because it's developed by the University of Florida, but it's really applicable to anywhere. And we'll go over those in a minute. Proper planting of trees and shrubs to make sure they get off to a good start. Benefits of mulch, proper mulch application, when and where turf is appropriate, and proper maintenance and practice for healthier landscapes. So this is some of the stuff we cover in that training that we do. So let's talk a little bit about the principles. So using mulch is important because it holds in soil, reduces erosion, helps plants grow well, especially if it's not in a sodded area. IPM is integrated pest management. So there's a process to that. Chemicals is the last resort. There's other things you need to do as far as right plant, right place. So right plant, right place is about finding a location that a certain plant likes to live in the conditions it likes to live in. It's matching the two up. So you have an area that's kind of dry, maybe sandy, things like that, high pH soils, soil pHs, things like that. You want to match up those conditions with what the plant likes to live in. For more on that, you can get your county extension on matching those up, and I'm sure they have guides on that. Watering efficiently, you don't want to waste water. Overwatering can cause issues. We'll talk about that a little later. Fertilizing correctly, it's following the instructions on the packages for proper rates, or the University of Illinois instructions on what's proper for your area. Providing for wildlife. So we have a lot of urbanized communities. So providing for wildlife is very important since kind of the urban habitat of our lawns and landscapes is now habitat for a lot of different types of wildlife now. Protecting the water. So that's just protecting that water quality we talked about, keeping stuff off impervious surfaces, and recycling yard waste. So there's a lot of ways you can recycle that. You can compost it. You can mulch it with the mulching mower, the grass clippings like talked about earlier, and then reducing stormwater runoff. So those are a few things that we want to do. So sod grass isn't appropriate everywhere. So some places you want turf, some places you don't. Next to pools are an awful spot to have it. Lakes and ponds near the edge. There's alternatives we can do to that. And you never want to take your mower for a swim. That happens quite often around here anyway. And people have been killed that way because the mower ends up atop them and end up drowning. So there are better options for that. Islands in commercial areas are really an issue for sod. It's usually hot and dry. And then it's hard to maintain. It gets walked off on and carts parked on and things like that. A proper planting. So you want to make sure you dig a shallow wide hole. Do not cover the root ball with extra soil. You want to break up that root ball, maybe cut off the matted roots on the outside. Ideally, you want to root wash. I recommend following the root wash primer from the University of Washington State. It's a great guide on root washing. Root washing definitely improves establishment and shortens the time of establishment. And you can see when you got problem roots. I really recommend that. I'm going to mulch out to about 4 feet around any trees and shrubs. And not right on top of the root ball when you first plant it, then you can bring it up closer afterwards, but not right up against the trunk, as that'll cause circling roots and other issues. You want about a good 3 to 4 inches of mulch, loose mulch, and that's how you want to plant. Make sure you don't put it too close to foundations. That can become issues as well. You want to make sure you stay outside the drip line of roofs and those sorts of things. That way it gets sunlight and water to it, and it's not right up against the building so you can maintain the building as well. So mulching is important because it reduces weeds, reduces erosion, reduces soil or water loss by 33% according to University of Florida. I've seen some studies show as high as 76%, and improves the growth of plant and also improves the soil structure underneath and provides nutrients and moisture holding capacity back to the soil and the root systems. It also provides mechanical damage when you put around trees from especially small saplings from weed whacking them. Pruning. So in our presentation, in our training, we also cover pruning. It's about controlling growth and making sure you have proper structure to the trees and those sorts of things. Make sure you know when an arborist is needed. If you do a lot of pruning, it's always good to hire an arborist or consult an arborist on what to do. So you got, on the left, you got a pore form of a tree. It's got codominant leaders. You got included bark there where they have two main branches coming off. That's not a good tree. Eventually, when it gets larger, it's going to be more prone to wind damage and breaking. So on the right, it's a good form of a tree. You have a nice central leader up the center, nice evenly distributed limbs all the way around, all coming off about a 45 to 90 degree angle and not too congested anywhere. That's what you want. You can correct that if it's a smaller tree, like less than 4 inches diameter. But once it gets so big, you really can't pick a leader at that point. It's got too much growth on it to actually heal over properly. You don't want to top trees. It's ugly, it's bad practice. It's not good because it creates a bunch of congested limbs that are too close together and poorly attached. It can become hazards later on and things like that. So if you need to do heavy pruning of a tree, make sure you hire an arborist that knows what they're doing. Different trees can be pruned different ways depending on species and stuff like that. It's a good idea to consult an arborist. Lion's tailing is bad too because it allows wind to go through the trees. A lot of times it's done to get sunlight to a lawn below it, or maybe in commercial areas to see the signs of buildings. But it's a bad practice because if a windstorm comes, the wind actually goes through the tree as opposed to up and over the whole canopy, and it can cause it to flap in the wind like a flag on the end of a flagpole. And it's more likely to cause damage. It's hard to restore because it shades out all the branches below. You'd have to thin the top canopy several times to encourage the growth down below. You want to use the 3-cut method when pruning tree limbs. Basically do the A cut a few inches out from your limb. That way, just don't make sure not to pinch your saw underneath there. And go an inch or two over and do that B cut on top. It'll swing down and fall off. And then after that, you can just outside that collar, that kind of swollen area on the limb where it comes out. When it's outside, heals over properly. But you'll make that C cut after the weight of that limb has been taken off. Pruning debris and management. So when you're pruning trees and limbs and shrubs, those sorts of things, mowing, you might have debris left over. You want to make sure you handle that properly. A good option, especially when you got, in this example, shrubs that go way down to the ground, you can actually just rake those underneath. They'll act as mulch. They'll give nutrients back to the soil. You can, it's going to improve the moisture in the soil and all sorts of things. You're not really going to see it. And if you want it to kind of look nice, you can always go back and put a new layer of fresh mulch right over the top of it. And then you don't have to haul it off or dispose of it or anything like that. So turf, you want to know your grass types in your region, know the proper mowing heights for those. When and where turf works, identify and prevent turf stress, and keep debris off impervious surfaces, and know about low maintenance or no-mow zones. So turf does a few good things for water pollution. It helps slow down the stormwater velocity and it basically acts as a filter. So the grass itself, the thatch layer and the roots actually will help filter out contaminants. The roots will help uptake nutrients before it gets to our groundwater. The roots also in the thatch and the blades actually help reduce the impact of rainwater on the soil surface, causing erosion and help hold in those soil particles. And that helps protect our groundwater and surface water. So in Nelson County, we recommend a 6-foot no-mow zone. I think a no-mow zone is a good idea in your water bodies for a couple reasons. One, you can plant it with native vegetation, so it's good habitat for wildlife. Also, then you don't have to worry about taking your mower for a swim. You don't have to worry about trying to weed eat that. I've done that before. It's not fun. Hours of weeding along stream banks is not a fun thing to do. You just go in there periodically and clean out any invasive weeds and stuff like that you have. You plant them real densely with natives. A lot of times it can look really nice and provide that wildlife habitat and less low maintenance. And instead of mowing it every time, you just go in there every couple weeks or so, 8 weeks or so, and just clean out any weeds you don't want growing there. And it's always good to have some emergent aquatic vegetation along the shoreline as well to reduce that erosion. So mowing height is very, very important. One, it helps increase drought tolerance. It increases nutrient water uptake because the taller the shoots, the deeper the roots is what I like to say. That picture there says 1,000 words on it right there. So also when you have taller shoots and deeper roots and more root system, it can outcompete weeds, particularly. They can't get started because you have a lot more competition for those nutrients, sunlight, and water than it would otherwise. So it also has more pest resistance when it grows more efficiently that way as well. So I looked it up in Northern Illinois. It's recommended in the Illinois extension that you should mow about 2.5 to 3 inches for your area is proper mowing height. Mowing debris, you want to make sure you keep it out of storm drains. We talked about a little bit earlier. When you're mowing, try to keep it, if you have a chute shooting it out, try to shoot it not towards the front of the storm drain. Try to make sure you blow it back in the turf or clean it up otherwise, and keep out those storm drains to prevent those nutrient issues. Equipment maintenance, you want to make sure that you maintain your equipment so they're not leaking. Make sure you clean up any chemical spills you have related to maintenance, and make sure you store and transport your materials safely and protect your equipment. So when you're mowing, you actually want to keep sharp mowing blades about every 8 to 10 hours of sharpening. That way you don't have to go back over your areas and things like that. Make sure your mower deck's still mowing at the proper height. You want to check that periodically because you'll hit stuff, it wears it over time. Sometimes the numbers on the settings don't really mean inches, it's just a random number. So it's always good to check that mowing height, the proper mowing height. And make sure you don't run over any rocks and stones or trash and debris so you don't hit somebody's car or hit somebody with that flying out of your mower or damage your mower. You want to maintain and fix your leaks. Make sure you do it on impervious surfaces so you can clean up that spill if that happens. It's very important. Ideally under some kind of covering, so in case it rains, it's not going to wash off. You want it to make sure like under a carport or in a garage, something like that. Secondary containment for your chemicals is great, is really good to do. That way, if a container prevents a leak, it's not going to go out in the environment. You can clean it up. Also, I think on mobile storage, it's good to have a lid as well. It keeps the weather off your can, like for example, a gas can. It keeps it from degrading the cans or heating up and they swell up. And then when you open them, they can spurt out gasoline, could get in your eye or something like that, or also in the environment. So it's good to keep a cover of them. And also when gas gets expensive, people start stealing them. So you can keep them out of sight or locked up. You make sure to store materials indoors. That's a good idea just to keep any residues out of there. And also, like I said, about the integrity of the vessel intact, because sunlight does degrade them and weather does degrade them over time. Seals will start going bad, that sort of thing. So the more they're out in the weather, the shorter time they are going to last. So if you have a spill, make sure you clean up immediately. Use sand, kitty litter, any absorbent granules. There's lots of materials out there for that. I like the absorbent pads, are really good. They got kind of expensive after the oil spill down here in the Gulf. They weren't too badly priced for that, and they're starting to come back down in price, but they work excellent. They don't take up a lot of room. They're easy to clean up, and they absorb usually a variety of chemicals. It's really good to have a set of those absorbent pads on hand in your cleanup kit. If you have granules or something that have to absorb, make sure you have a way to clean it up, like a dustpan or broom, or a shovel, a broom, something like that, to clean it up in a bag to put it in and know where to dispose of it properly. A little touch on irrigation. Let's do a little thing about irrigation and nutrient pollution, but it's actually very important because proper irrigation helps prevent leaching and runoff. So you have frequency and duration. Frequency is how often it goes off. That's about once or twice a week, at least for our area, that's the proper amount. Duration would be how long it runs for. And there's ways to determine that. I'll talk about that in a minute. You want to troubleshoot irrigation systems, look for leaking pipes, leaking valves, broken heads, those sorts of things. There's wastewater, also cause erosion issues sometimes. Rain sensor is always good, so it's not going off when you don't need it. And then make sure you have use quality watering restrictions if you have those in your area, and that prevent water stress by having proper watering your lawn and landscapes. And then identify signs of overwatering. So usually there's certain weeds that pop up, you get more weed problems, things like that. Yeah, or sometimes the lawn will start rotting if you're overwatering, so keep attention for those kind of things. So make sure you adjust your timer seasonally, because when it's cool out, you're not needing as much water. Maybe you have a rainy season, you're not gonna need as much water, or maybe turn it off altogether. Make sure you water just before sunrise. It's very important, because that's when the lowest wind and evaporation time is. So you're going to get less water loss due to evaporation. It's going to go where you want it. It's not going to blow off your target area. You want to calibrate your sprinklers, very important, most people don't do. So calibrating your sprinklers, you want to do about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch per watering cycle. And what that does, it's very important to prevent leaching of nutrients to the groundwater. Also to prevent runoff. If you have more less pervious type soils, it'll prevent runoff and it'll totally wet the root zone without pushing past that or causing excessive runoff for that amount of irrigation, which can transport your nutrients from fertilizers and things like that off-site. So proper irrigation saves water and improves plant health by proper nutrient uptake, by having proper water availability, and reduces runoff and chemicals that are needed for disease treatment may happen if you're overwatering, and it reduces your non-point source pollution. It also reduces weeds. Debris management, so you can learn more about debris management and how it affects water quality. Want to make sure that you aren't spreading invasive pests and species. I know it's a big problem here. I know some up north it's different species than it is here, but pay attention to that when you're disposing of landscape debris and those sorts of things. And then make sure you recycle your landscape debris or dispose it properly otherwise. And know who to report violations to. So if you see people improperly disposing debris, dumping stuff, blowing grass down the street, know your local municipality, maybe find out what number that is to call or a contact. Here we have C-Click Fix, which is an app on the phone you can report stuff on, which works really good. You may have that up there, makes it really easy reporting. But it's good to know those things ahead of time so when you see it, you can just report it. And maybe when you all can follow up with what's appropriate for your area on that, or what division or department you have to report it to. And then, so we want to prevent those unwanted nutrients to our water bodies, and we do it by cleaning up after ourselves, making sure we're using chemicals properly, and make sure we dispose of the landscape the way we should. Like I said before, that leaf fall season is very important. Believe it or not, here in Florida, we actually have a leaf fall season too. We actually have 2 of them. Depending on the trees, some fall in the fall, some fall February to March, when the new leaves come out. So, and we do get a lot of leaf debris during that time as well. So it's good to keep it out of storm drains, prevent the storm drain flooding, as well as the nutrient issues and bacteria issues as well. Make sure you don't illegally dump. Make sure you know your dump sites for proper landscape debris dumping. If you see that happening, know who to contact. I don't know about it there, but here it's actually a Class 2 felony if you're a commercial person illegally dumping, and they can actually confiscate your entire rig, truck, trailer, mowers, everything. So it can, depends on who you report it to, how it can be handled. And then make sure you use recycled grass clippings and leaves. You mulch in your lawn, that's great because it's basically free fertilizer, helps improve the soil structure and retain moisture and give nutrients back to your lawn. Time is short. Lots to talk about on this topic. I could talk about it for hours, but we don't have that much time. So, but to learn more, I suggest visiting the University of Florida, University of Illinois Extension. They probably have good information on that. Other general industry resources for your state are really good here as well. And then looking for new publications that come out, because there is new science coming about all this stuff all the time. And sometimes it dispels some long-held thoughts on certain things. So it's good to keep up to date on those things. And then always ask questions. It's always a good thing to do. That's how I stay professional. And if you're interested in learning more about what we do with our online landscape BMP class, you can always welcome to take it. It's $15, and it's www.landscapebmp.eventbrite.com. Most of it applies to pretty much anywhere. There's a few things that probably won't, like mangroves and palm trees, but about 95% it will apply to pretty much anywhere. But if you have any questions, just you're welcome to contact me. So what you do does make a difference. So just keep in mind that we all live, work, and play in a watershed, and that you want to control those debris and follow the proper fertilization and those sorts of things, try to reduce our erosion and our impacts to our environment, because it all does add up. For example, in our county, we have tens of thousands of landscapers maintaining hundreds of thousands of lawns. You calculate that together, just leaf debris and lawn clippings just out in front of each property in a road going to our storm drain system. You're talking many tons of nitrogen and phosphorus that can be prevented every year. And that's why we have that landscape education requirement in our county. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you.
All right, great job, Ryan. We do have a couple questions that came in.
Okay.
Let's see, does Pinellas County require that all landscape contractors be certified to apply fertilizer?
Yes, that's actually a statewide requirement. So anybody applying fertilizer has to get a 8-hour training and then obtain a state license.
Okay.
That's a state requirement as well as a county requirement.
Okay, and do you have a regulation for golf courses?
We do. There's actually a BMP manual for golf courses for the state of Florida. We actually require it to be followed in our county. We're just now kind of making sure they're doing that, but that's actually becoming a nationwide movement in the golf course industry. So you might want to look for that. They are just now in almost every state trying to push forward BMPs for fertilization and maintenance and landscaping in golf courses. And there's basically a similar movement to create a similar thing throughout the entire country through the U.S. Golf Course Association and other industry associations. So they're actually pushing forward with that because I think they see the environmental target on them with the impact they have and the amount of nutrients they use and how it's done. So I think they're trying to get ahead of that and actually be proactive about that, which is a good sign.
Okay, very good, thank you. One final one. How do you train your dog to use the pooper scooper like that?
Yeah. I guess we have very smart dogs down here in Florida.
All right, hey, great job. Thank you, Ryan.
No problem.
We're going to move on to our final speaker. That is Dan Bounds from Baxter and Woodman. Dan is a senior water resources engineer and has over 25 years experience assisting public agencies with stormwater program development. His civil engineering degree is from the University of Illinois. He has performed maintenance program evaluations for numerous municipal programs. And Dan is going to talk about the effects of improper pollution prevention practices on the environment.
All right, thanks, Chris. Yeah, that was my question, Ryan, about the dog. I got a couple dogs that need to learn how to do that. So let's get my slides up here going. Let's see, get from beginning. Okay, get to the beginning. All right, thanks everybody. And I'll bring things home here with some questions I've been getting from local municipality staff. I get out a lot and do pollution prevention training, talk to the crews doing the work out in the fields. And I got some interesting questions over the past year, which were related to how does these materials, how do these chemicals actually affect organisms, the environment? And I was excited to get those questions because it let me know people were actually thinking about this stuff and the way they do their activities and their pollution prevention practices. So we've talked a lot about maintenance that happens in the fields. Of course, you have your things that go on at fixed facilities like these, but you've also got your parks, open spaces, you've got your roadways, your parking lots, lots of work going on in the sewer system, water system, storm drain system, parks, recreation areas, streets and parking lots. And our previous presenters talked about some of these common sources of pollution or these pollutants, but here's a list again, and some of my favorite photos from my 25-year collection of things flowing out of storm drains that probably should not be. But what I'd like to do is go through most of these types of pollutants and talk about the way they affect the environment. A disclaimer, I'm a water resources engineer, everybody. I'm not an aquatic biologist. I'm not a toxicologist, but I'm gonna pretend to be one maybe here for a little bit and be dangerous with the topic. So let's talk about trash and debris first. You've seen lots of photos already of things blocking inlets, causing drainage problems. That trash and debris gets out into our streams and to our lakes and looks very unsightly. Doesn't look like a well-managed program, and we've got a lot of trash and debris in our waterways. And wildlife can get caught up and tangled, and it affects the way they need to do what they do in the wild. And trash can carry other pollutants. It's not just that paper or that foam, it's what else is in there, food waste, other types of garbage trash. Trash can be the vehicle that carries other pollutants into our waterways as well. And then sediment does a lot of things in the environment. Sediment is, if you've got disturbed soil, working with soil materials, that soil gets weathered, broken down, and can create sediment issues going through our storm drain system into our local waterways. It contains that fine particles. We're talking about the silts, the clays that stay suspended and get out into our waterways and then eventually settle. If you've got BMP or pollution prevention issues at construction sites or municipal yards, you can have this sediment running off. But really any paved area that's collecting sediments and can wash off during a rain event, or any disturbed soil that you're working with out in your field activities can be the source of sediments. And the first thing excessive sediment is going to do in the environment is it's going to start to block light. And if you start to block light with cloudy water conditions or turbid water conditions, you're going to affect the plant growth in that water body. And the plant growth is essential to the health and the proper function of that ecosystem. Think of plant growth and the food chain that you learned about in grade school and providing the food and the source of nutrients for higher order species. That sunlight is critically important for that. That sediment inside the organism itself or around the organism, like a fish, can start to clog or damage sensitive tissues in that organism, be it macroinvertebrates or fish. Kind of think of that sand as sandpaper in the waterway, or that sediment as sand in the waterway moving through the organisms and can really damage sensitive tissues. That sediment can start to suffocate bed organisms and start to form thick deposits on the bottom of streams, and that can destroy aquatic habitats and especially spawning beds for fish and other organisms. Okay, so sediment can carry nutrients into waterways as well, further contributing to nutrient management issues, and we've heard about those already. And it can also carry toxins flowing into waterways. So fertilizers we've heard a lot about, and those are great presentations that we heard earlier. It can come in through stormwater runoff and provide excessive nutrients into our waterways. And overabundance of that fertilizer creates an ideal environment for growing algae, and it really reduces the aesthetic quality or the enjoyability of those water bodies too. But one of the processes that this creates is eutrophication. And I like to think of that as a sort of a chain reaction that can happen. We get that excessive amount of nutrients in the water body and we start to grow excessive algae. That algae will die off and all of that dead material, that dead algae, will start to consume oxygen, and that will deplete oxygen levels in that waterway, and that will create fish kills and loss of other organisms as well. So eutrophication can lead to dead zones. This is areas where aquatic life cannot survive because of little to no oxygen. That algae is just growing faster than the ecosystem can handle. Lakes and ponds lose the clarity of the fish population. And I think maybe the most famous dead zone is the one at the end of the Gulf of Mexico basin that Jason showed earlier, that can actually be seen from space on satellite images. Fuels, petroleum products, they've got different levels of toxicity. I think it's pretty common knowledge that if we spill a fuel or an oil into a waterway, there's going to be some environmental harm. But if it's in a small body of water or a shallow area, it doesn't take much of a spill to have an acute toxicity. That means it's going to be poisonous to animals, organisms in that water body right away. And create a kill environment. But a chronic toxicity can occur if you've got small leaks, spills, or mishandling of fuels and oils over time into your water body. The second largest fish kill I ever had to respond to as an engineer was caused by a mishandling of fuels. Salt's in the news a lot, and the chlorides from the sodium chloride of that salt, we use that in our winter periods to keep our roadways clear and safe. We've got a lot of de-icing programs in the area that focus on a variety of BMPs shown there on the screen to keep our roads safe, but using the right amount of salt and chlorides to do that. But excessive levels of salt in our ponds and lakes will create a saltwater layer over time at the bottom, and that will keep nutrients and other essentials away from aquatic plants and animals in those waterways. And then elevated concentrations of chlorides affect the overall growth, reproduction, just the survival of a large range of invertebrates, fish, amphibians. It really affects everything in the waterway. Salts can also contain impurities and other compounds. Sometimes there's anti-caking agents that will contain a cyanide compound that could be an issue. And then we're not putting laboratory grade salts out there on the road. That would be super expensive. So the road salt that's typically purchased has concentrations of metals, a variety of those, phosphorus that can be in those salts. Just quickly on sanitary waste, bacteria and other pathogens in our sanitary waste can get into our recreation areas and cause illness problems. So when we're doing sanitary sewer work in the field, make sure that the sanitary water and the cleanings are not making it into the storm drain system. And if we're vacuuming out sanitary manholes, make sure that equipment drains back into the manhole before moving on and letting that equipment drain into our curb or into an inlet. And then just think about what you've got at the shop and in your vehicles and equipment that you use every day as far as chemicals. Your cleaners, your detergents, solvents, pesticides, your paints and coatings, your oils, fuels, other equipment. Every one of those is going to have a toxicity associated with it at a certain concentration. So even if it says environmentally friendly, EPA approved, you know, enough of just about anything will create a toxic situation in our local waters. So in summary, you know, stormwater carries pollutants to our waterways. I hope we've hit that message pretty clear through the presentations. They can be harmful to our aquatic organisms and our ecosystems, affect our drinking water sources, and affect the way we use our waters for recreation. Fishing, other ways that we like to get out and enjoy our local waters. So when you're performing your pollution prevention practices in the field, that really helps to protect those waterways. And these slides just give you a sort of an introduction as to how those different types of materials and chemicals that you're using actually affect those organisms we're trying to protect. So Chris, that's the end of my slides.
Very good. Well, thank you, Dan. Great job. I don't see any questions coming in. I think all of the presenters did a great job, and their contact information is in their presentation. So we'll make sure we get those out to everybody. And if you do have questions, feel free to contact those presenters. But right now, that's all we have time for. So I'd like to thank our presenters one more time. So thank you, Todd, Jason, Ryan, and Dan for sharing your knowledge and experiences with us. I'd also like to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon. We hope you have enjoyed and learned a few things from the webinar. Please remember that Mary Mitros will be emailing everybody with a link to the recorded webinar, all 4 presentations, and a certificate for 1.5 PDHs. We anticipate another round of these pollution prevention webinars this fall, so look for those. And so until next time, be happy, be healthy, and be safe. Thank you very much, and have a great day.